Welcome to the panel discussion, Creating Circular Cities. Cities are the heart of the global resource challenge. They consume over 75% of natural resources and generate 50% of global waste. A shift towards circular cities can reduce waste, improve resource efficiency, and just really drive more of that livability, quality of life in urban spaces. But implementing it at scale is always challenging. You need strong policy support, investment. So we really want to try to understand how can cities drive that change here today. I'm joined by an incredible panel of experts to dive into this topic. Please welcome Yutaka Mikami from the International Affairs Bureau of the City of Yokohama, Olivia Wong from MTR Corporation, Sandy Kumar from UN Habitat, and Bambang Chandra from DAO. Welcome all. For decades, we've seen that cities have been using a take, make, waste model. It leads to a lot of resource challenges and massive waste issues. Sandy, I just want to get your perspective first on this. From your experience across Asia, what would you say is the biggest barrier to waste management, and how are cities tackling this?
So, first, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for hosting UN Habitat for this event. It's really a pleasure to talk about waste management and circular economy and our approach also to tackle this issue and challenge. I will say that regarding your question, I will say there are two main components. The technical one, which is really one of the barriers because the dissemination of the knowledge sometimes on the technical part, on innovative technology can be a barrier for local government, for cities, municipalities, and also national government. So this lack of sharing of knowledge sometimes can be first a barrier. Then I will say also other barrier linked to the waste management and the circular economy is the dissemination of practices, best practices, and the building capacities, which is really important. When I mention building capacities, it's not only at the national level, it's also at the local level for the communities to really disseminate broadly the knowledge, the method, tailored to the audience, of course. And also, let's mention the financial part, because for most of government, circular economy and waste management sometimes are not the major topic in their roadmap, strategic roadmap. So we need to include this topic in each roadmap at the city level, but not only at the city level, I will say at the national government, at the national level. It can be through a framework, a national framework to provide guidelines also to the cities, to the stakeholders, to the different stakeholders, experts, to implement new technology, new initiative, targeting an inclusive initiative also.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, from the Asian perspective, there's also a lot of informal sector when it comes to waste management. What are some ways that cities are sort of tackling that?
So for example, we have a project led in the Philippines called OC. So let me just, sorry, I don't remember exactly the name, but it's Healthy Ocean and Clean Cities Initiative. So this project deals with the marine plastic management at different coastal cities. So different cities ask us to support them in the elaboration of action plan and policies through different action. So we support them in this elaboration of the action plan and the policies at the same time. And we tried in the process to include different stakeholders to participate and to be part of the debate and the dialogue. So it can be from, sorry, my micro is just falling. It can be by the private sector and also at the community level. We are working especially with the informal sector also to include them in the process and to give them other opportunities to create and generate incomes.
Bambang, so plastics is obviously an important example of single-use waste that you see in cities. Just want to understand how do the systemic challenges in waste management differ when we think of plastics?
Yeah, thank you, Shalvin, and thanks. Glad that I'm here. Thanks, everyone. I think it is challenging in the extent that our current society is the way that we are putting today is more like linear rather than circular. From make, extract, make, and then dispose. Now we are trying to make it this circular, and this is something that new. It is not something that easy, as many on the infrastructure is not ready yet. And this is what we think, believing that we are talking about circular city. I think that's what we need to really driving it. It's require a lot of so-called integration system in terms of the policy, in terms of the technology, even the business innovation that we believe going to helping. But more importantly is the community involvement. I'm giving one example that in one city that, I mean, not one city, I mean, in fact, a country, there is a recyclers named Lovery that has been very innovative in their business model. They are developing what they call the smart bin, putting in every single so-called location of the community. And this smart bin is going to be able to really to have the society to bring up the recycles into the smart bin with the technology that they can detect with the camera what is that. Every single, they call it dry recycle, going to be able to be putting into the smart bin, and then they're weighting it. And at the same time, when they're weighting it, they're having so-called the credit into what they've been putting in. So it is really attracting the community on joining in. And today in China, around 22 million people already involved with it. They're installing 31,000 smart bin around China, 38 cities. So from first tier, second tier, third tier, that you have it. And they're able to really collecting 1,800 tons of recycled products.
Yeah, thank you for those examples. It's very useful to contextualize it all. I'm just wondering, when we've seen increase in producer extended responsibility, so EPR laws have been growing in the region. Just want to sort of understand how that's impacted from a producer perspective, the plastics industry itself, and have you seen any progression in terms of plastic waste management as a result of it?
Yeah, I think this is something that we need to really putting it all together. Like I mentioned about the integration of the overall policy. EPR is one of it, and we believe it's also going to be helping understanding the challenges of this infrastructure development. So hoping that every single players in the industry that involving into it is going to be try to find a way on using this EPR to really making the infrastructure working. So several countries that we are seeing are start implementing, for example, like in India, which is very specific. And in fact, they're also putting the regulation that's supposed to be starting up April this year, 1st of April, to really putting the mandating, every single packaging have to get 10% PCR content. I believe that this is going to helping on driving what are this circularity going to happen in plastic.
Thank you for that. Yutaka, as a leading sustainable city in Japan, I'm wondering what sort of practices have helped waste management from your perspective?
So thank you for allow me to participate from local government in Japan. So in Yokohama City, the waste generation with increased with population and economic growth from 1960s to the 1990s. So to reduce amount of waste, so we started to divide the recyclable resources from the burnable waste into 2005. And as a result, so we reduced the waste of amount of 43% in 10 years.
To what extent do you think that the practices that you've put in place for this waste management can be replicated in other growing urban Asian cities?
So City of Yokohama, for more than 10 years, we have been providing technical cooperation to Bangkok, the city, and Da Nang in Vietnam, and Metro Cebu in Philippines through the MOU for technical cooperation. So in Da Nang, with the support of JICA and IGES, the city has been piloting program to raise awareness among residents of the segregation of garbage. And also in Mandaue City, in Metro Cebu, Philippines, so with the support of Ministry of Environment of Japan and JICA and ADB, a plastic recycling factory has been established established by a Yokohama-based company, so which is leading to reduce of plastic waste in Metro Sep. And Mandaue City was initially a participant in ADB's waste training program in Yokohama, but recently, as a successful city in terms of segregation, the city Mandaue City has become a lecturer to introduce successful cases to other Asian states, so which is a very wonderful topic for Yokohama City, who has been supporting the program. Thank you.
I think we have an overview on the waste management challenges itself, but like another way to help move towards circularity would be to be able to produce and use less resources, from the design phase and from the production stage of the products and services itself. I want to get the industry perspective on this. So Olivia, if I can come to you first. I just want to understand what is being done in the transport sector in terms of embedding circularity.
So then it may not seem obvious from a transportation perspective. We don't really produce anything per se, but we do carry about 5 million passengers a day within Hong Kong, which we reach everywhere. We are a publicly listed company, but majority owned by the government as well. So hence, I think that, from our fellow speakers talked about collaboration, that becomes really key. I think one of the things that we do have a lot of touch point, and I think that's where an organization like MTR, from a public transport perspective, where we can actually play a role around this kind of the circular city concepts. I think a lot of it is to start with educations, and I think my fellow speaker talked about that as well. And how do you educate? You educate your own people about the importance of how do they manage the waste that they have. We collect, we all have to eat. We collect food waste, so we can take it to a place called Old Park, where we actually take those and regenerate into compost and make it into usable work. You'll be surprised there are agriculture space in Hong Kong as well. We do have agriculture land. And then on top of that, because as a public transport, but we also actually manage a lot of retail business. We are landlord. Landlord not only in the public transport space, but landlord in terms of the retail space and also residential. So what we do then is we educate our tenant, our residential tenants, in terms of providing space, again, for them to collect, recycle, or collect waste, but teach them also how to separate the waste in a way that where we can actually reuse them. One of the trials that we've actually just recently started, and we hope that we can do a little bit more of, is that we work with the Hong Kong government. So we actually there's a kind of a joint government and private corporation, something called a green community, where it helps, where we built a lot of these kind of recycling center and teaching the local population in terms of how to separate the different ways that makes them to become useful. So we actually have one of the first one that we're going to have. We have a first one that's in our station where we can collect. So as I said, we reach over 5 million passengers a day. And so by actually having these kind of space and being really public about the importance of what they can do, and not see them as waste, but see them as future resource becomes really key. So I think from a transportation or even actually just as a business, our responsibility to educate our people, educate then our business partner, then ultimately educate our community becomes key.
Thank you. Mamang, from the plastic sector perspective, how do we embed circularity within the material itself? And what's the most promising innovation that you're seeing in driving that?
Yeah, I think we put Dow as kind of like material science company, so we are putting technology, on the forefront. That what we are trying to do, as we are trying to make circularity to happen. It's on plastic. Collection is one thing that I just explained early on, but it's also important after collection, what next? We do a lot of mechanical recycling in a way just to clean up and then reuse, but also more important is how can we try to also break out back the molecule, what we call the chemical recycling, back into the the monomolecule that we have today, and make a polymers again. So those are one of the technology that we are developing. It's in the scaling up position at this moment. We are hoping that when we are able to do that, then plastic waste, we're going to get recollecting it back, and then reuse and making the plastic as a virgin plastic material with the quality that as a virgin as well. On top of that, we also developing one of its kind, the petrochemical complex. It's going to be in Canada. That's going to be close to a zero emission. with all the technology that we are putting in to make sure that we are able to do as what carbon capture, we do all this hydrogen energy regenerations, etc., to be able to achieve those. It is take time. It is not readily available today, but we are looking forward to have it ready by 2030.
Okay. Yeah, Sandy, I mean, I think we've heard there's still a lot of challenges when it comes to actually embedding, circularity within products and services itself. But what would you say are the tools that are already kind of out there for industry to leverage right now?
Okay, thank you very much for this question. Actually, we have different tools developed at UN Habitat from our experience on the ground. So just to mention, for example, in this program, the OC program implemented in the Philippines, we work a lot with the private sector to develop like business plan for informal workers and especially for women to raise their own company, to run after their own company on circular economy. It's called small enterprises, but it's one of the tools that we can provide to the private sector to work also with the community and the vulnerable groups who are also generating incomes and resources. Another tool that we are using in India, in Thailand, and also in the Philippines, but globally, it's the WAC tool. This WAC tool helped government, but it can help also industrials to track and to understand, to have the big picture of the waste, of this waste situation. Per household, per cities also. And all these data are centralized on the platform, digital platform, and it's open data. So everyone can access to it. So it can help also to connect, to build this bridge with the industrial stakeholders and to build like this circular economy, as you mentioned. It's new, and I agree, I'm really impressed about your work now that you're doing. It's really great, and I think we need to speak after this session. But yes, I think it's really important also to connect with the innovative technologies. And as you mentioned also, my colleague, you talk about education and also dissemination, to spotlight the knowledge on this part. The dissemination of the knowledge, I think, is the key, because it will help to really build the communication between the different sectors. Today, we can see and notice that all the sectors, the private, the public, and the community, at the community level, they work in a kind of silo way. And we need to build bridges between these different sectors, different stakeholders. So this kind of event also is a way to promote this connection between the sectors. But yes, I think there are many ways also to involve the different stakeholders and to deploy different tools, as the WAC tool I mentioned. The WAC tool, from our experience on the ground, succeed to really gather the stakeholders around the table and to speak, at least to initiate this dialogue between the stakeholders. And it's really a tool that anyone can use, and it will be helpful to have this data library or database filled by other cities also.
Yeah, I think we've laid the ground on, talking about how to tackle waste, how do you tackle the making, and then now I just want to talk about the take angle, right? And you see that everyone, the whole ecosystem has to make an effort into this. Like businesses, consumers, everybody needs to consume more mindfully. And so, Olivia, I'm keen to get your thoughts on this, because you have engagement with, like you said, 5 million over people every day. How do we really encourage mindful consumption? What has been working for MTR?
So I'm not sure about in terms of whether I can speak about the mindful consumption, but I think I hear what Sandy's saying is the education again. And so I think a lot of it is you got to start when they are very young. And so one of the things that we have been doing, and again, is realizing that a lot of what we call them waste or things that where we don't see them as useful anymore can be extremely useful for many people within our society. So one of the projects that we have within MTR, we call a legacy train program. So what we do is that where, we heard earlier about Boeing, how, newer plane comes in, then you can take away, the older planes because they're much more fuel efficient. Somehow you have to figure out what to do with those old planes. So we figure out what to do with our old trains, where we hopefully that in a way is education. So then we work with a lot of the different schools in Hong Kong, but then also different NGOs, partners that we have. And what we do is we basically take some of the schools, they will take our entire train and we will retrofit it nicely. It becomes a classroom. It's a classroom to actually teach young children in terms of, what were these trains before and why are they doing it here today? And then and why is it not somewhere, chucked somewhere in the junkyard, but now is actually being reused? So then what are the thinkings that they can actually have? We also, for example, so inside a train, if you look at, if you ever take an MTR, there's a lot of train parts. We have seats, we have handles. So what we've also done in working with different schools, especially SEN school, is that we'll take those train parts and we'll put it and make it into a classroom. So our belief at the end of the day, again, is that a lot of these parts where we think is a waste, is that we use it as a different opportunity to teach these children that have different needs. They're equally talented, but just need to be taught a different way. And we use that as a way to educate them. And then they can see that, I remember this train part. Oh, yes, this is when the last time you took a train from, Sai Ying Pun to, Kennedy Town. This is, and so then again, they become much more engaged. And so I think these are some of the things that when we talk about how to teach people to be more in terms of mindful in terms of their consumption, is to demonstrate to them that at the end of the day is that you don't always have to buy something new, and ultimately is that you can see the innovation and creativity by taking some of the old things and then you can make it new and you can make it usable, and you start them young. You don't wait until they get into university. You start when they're in elementary school, in secondary school, and that is how we build a generations of much more mindful consumers.
Yeah, the running theme seems to be education and awareness here. Yutaka, what are some successful approaches that have worked for Yokohama in mindful consumption?
So in Yokohama, Yokohama City took the initiative to explain the importance of waste segregation. The city conducted about 15,000 awareness campaign, including workshop and early morning educational guidance in 2 years when we began to segregation. And one more thing, so Olivia-san mentioned about education. So in Yokohama, all 10-year-old public elementary school students visit waste to energy facility and learn about waste segregation. So the students also talk about the importance of waste segregation with their families, so which is also a good opportunity for the parents who serve as a role models for their children to understand the importance of waste segregation. So I have 2 children, so 12 years old, 10 years old. So they asked me, the importance. They told me about the importance of segregation for the future. Thank you.
And so we'll come to audience questions in a bit, so I would encourage to please start thinking what you'd like to ask. Circularity drives a lot of positive social impact, and that's one way to position also just to sort of get everybody going on this. Sandy, I want to get your thoughts on this. What would you say are the top of mind social impacts that circularity can have, and are these being well embedded into urban development strategies?
So this is a big question, but really interesting also. Just to let you know, it's true that circular economy should be a way to involve all the stakeholders and to be inclusive. This is really the first part, and also to participate to the effort of mitigation measure that every government, every cities need to lead and to implement at the local level. I will say that on strategy, yes, it's already embedded, as mentioned, in different countries, in Thailand, through this WAC tool in Chonburi city, and also in the Philippines, in the 4 cities that we supported on the OC program. We advised them and we designed some policies to be integrated in their strategic roadmap, I will say, in their action map, validated after also by the cities, by the government, at the same way. it's really, I will say it's a work that will take time first, and it will be done little by doing little and small scale intervention, for example, on the ground, and also lobbying through policy guidelines to the stakeholders, to the municipalities, to the government stakeholders, to the private sectors also. But it's a long way to integrate and embed a really circular economy in every project and every policies. You mentioned education needs to start now at really the youngest age that we can do, because it will have an impact after on our way of life, and also it will show the big picture that circular economy is not only a tool, it's also a way of living, I will say, that we need to follow up. You know, in different countries in the Western also, it was hard to implement recycling, and it started at school when we educated people and when we started small projects to be implemented. Every concept like this linked to the sustainable development, linked to climate change, mitigation, adaptation measure, it will take time, but we need to start from small project at the city level first, and then it will be an example for other cities. I always say that to be stronger for a city, we need to build like city network, city corporation, to exchange the best practices, the experience that each city has on this issue, on the waste management and the circular economy.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's the whole of ecosystem effort that needs to go in here. Bambang, I'm keen to get your thoughts on what's the biggest challenge as a producer that you're sort of facing in terms of collaborating with the right stakeholders?
Good question. Well, as said, it is something that not is being established. It is something that when we talk about circularity, it's not something that can be happening overnight. And the big challenge, to be frank, when we start trying to develop this, maybe starting from the small scale, is always the cost. The reality that when we are trying, let's say, to make plastic circularity to happen, to get collected, with such a small scale, the efficiency is not there. People are thinking every time when we talk about recycling is always, it has to be cheaper because it's a waste. The reality, it is much more. You have to imagine that if we talk about plastic, this industry is over 50 years of experience at scale that it's gone through. This one is just baby, infant, less than 5 years. So I think the encouragement is we need to have something to start. We need to have the ball rolling. Starting in small, maybe a little bit of a premium to make things working. Once we get it more economic scale, things get efficient, can get working, then everybody can enjoy. Because to be frank, we don't think that we can live without plastic with the environment, with the modernization that we have today. So we have to have it, but it is a challenge to have plastic that's going to be, creating harm to the environment. So we have to create, and that will be my encouragement to all of you as part of the education, to really think about when we try to do it, be part of this, a good way on trying to make and saving the world, as our next generation is watching us.
We have time for perhaps a question or two. Does anyone in the audience have anything they'd like to ask? I think everyone's just getting adjusted after lunch. Yes, please. Please state your name and affiliation and keep the question as brief as possible, please.
My name is Thawachai from TV Sud again. So basically, I have a discussion yesterday as well in terms of the corporations. And then I just want to give example in European country. For example, we have Catena X, which is a consortium or industrial association that we try to bring all the ecosystem, the player in the whole ecosystem from the OEM, manufacturers, recycler, all the way to the feedstock provider, right? That kind of the industrial association, I think it needed to drive the corporations, especially like what you're talking about. Dow have your own, and you have your own. How you connect all the dots here?
Sorry, can I just
Do
check
you
if it's a
foresee that
question?
you will have any association here happening in this conversation or in these regions? Because we keep talking quite a number of times already. Yeah.
Well, the answer is yes.
Yes.
And that is the way. The collaboration is needed. And this collaboration is not just one or two. In fact, in this kind of event, I am also seeing, and for me, usually I'm collaborating within the industry. We thought that by just doing that, we can make this to happen. The reality is not. We need to cooperate even more, much bigger. You know, this kind of sharing that every single one of you having this experience and example should also be the learning for us to see what else that we do. You know, my responsibility is around Asia Pacific, you know, Japan, Korea, Greater China, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, even up to India. And some of the experience that I share is what I'm seeing in each of this country or this city. I think we should try to adapting it. It's going to be different, given the reality and the fact of each of this region that have differently. But it is. I think when we talk about collaboration, I think this is what we needed. And we are more than happy and welcome, you know, to have any platform to work on that one.
Well, thank you for that. We are at time. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Thank you, Yukitaka, Olivia, Sandy, and Bambang.